Hi everyone, it's Sandra. In this video, I'm going to show you the final few stages of harvesting Gilligan, then taking these worms and this turtle-shaped outdoor worm bin to his winter vacation spot, refilling and winterizing the bin so the worms stay toasty all winter long. I want these worms to stay productive all winter, which is why winterizing the bin is so important. Here in Victoria, British Columbia, the worms would survive quite easily in a worm bin all winter, but I don't want them just to survive. I want them to thrive so that I get some great castings by the springtime. So far, I've baited these worms 10 times prior to doing this final harvest. And so what Landon and I are doing here is we're just putting the castings or the vermicompost into some containers and just grabbing the adult worms as we spot them and putting them in a little takeout container so that we'll be able to reset Gilligan with a hefty population of his worms right away. This also gives us the opportunity to grab some of the larger undigested bits of bedding. We started this bin with about, 40, 50 avocado pits in the summer, and then I added as the summer went on. So you can still see some avocado pits hanging around, and this is a big clump of newspaper that I added with a more recent feeding, and it's full of worms, so it's going to go into the bait container so that it'll be added right back into Gilligan when we refill him in a couple minutes. Every time we fill up a container full of vermicompost, we get another one of my styrofoam totes and we start filling that up. And every time we fill up one of these bait containers with some of the adult worms that we've been grabbing, Landon's been taking them over to my stacking tray system, the Tumbleweed Worm Cafe, and it's a temporary repository for Gilligan's worms until we can move him to his winter location. Although we're grabbing adults, if I do see cocoons like this beauty here that I just found, that's going into the little container because it's going to go into the reset Gilligan and not remain with this vermicompost. What's really interesting is this vermicompost that we're removing was plastered to the bottom of Gilligan, probably under about 8 inches of vermicompost. And we're still finding lots of these worms right at the very bottom level. This is where we need to move quickly because even though it's a coolish fall day, this vermicompost that we're leaving in Gilligan is going to dry out quickly, and there is no doubt that there are cocoons and baby worms in this material. This is our final tray of worms that we pulled out manually in the last few minutes. And so we're just going to empty it into the top level of the worm cafe. And I think we've probably emptied about 5 or 6 of these so far. Hopefully the worms will stay in the top level because that's where I hope to retrieve them and stick them all back into Gilligan. The bedding I've been prepping for the refill is some beautiful shredded maple leaves just with a healthy shovelful of aged horse manure on top. No additional moisture, maybe a tiny bit of rain went in there, not much. And this is what's going to be the lion's share of Gilligan's bedding. We put Gilligan up on some raised shelves, not only because I'm in a wheelchair and it makes it more accessible to me, but also so we can do something like this, which is we insulate the bottom of Gilligan through the winter. You'll see a double layer of cardboard going down, plus just some foam packaging material that we pulled out of a shipment. We've used that several times and it has worked very well. You'll see how easy it is for Landon to move this turtle worm farm. I think he says it weighs probably less than 2 pounds. You can pick these up for free. Most people, once they're finished with these children's sandboxes, they want to give them away. So I think I paid like $5 for Gilligan or something like that. All right, so here's Landon putting some tinfoil down, and we just invented this. We didn't know if it would work, but it does. And so we put some tinfoil down to protect the cardboard from the seed heating mat. It's a 10 by 20 mat. that we're placing down. And then the next thing is Landon will just lift Gilligan up, and that seed heating mat kind of goes straight down the center run of this worm bin. Not all the way to the edges all round, but enough. The next thing we do is to give him some egg cartons, and then Landon starts emptying in those prepared leaves and manure. There are just a few too many leaves in this container for Gilligan to take it all, especially with those egg cartons on the bottom. You'll see how dry these leaves are. They really had a fungal, musty smell to them. I think the worms are really going to get into them once these leaves are suitably moistened. So we did dump out the top of that container, which of course contained that horse manure. So we're lucky it already has some worm residents, soon to get a lot of Gilligan's worms to make some new friends. Gilligan doesn't have any drainage holes, so it's important to me to err on the side of dry bedding, especially in the beginning. The next bedding is a little patio container that we use to just put the spent leaves from our salad garden, and because those patio containers also have worm castings, I throw any worm cocoons or worms that I see in those containers into this little vermicompost bin, and over the course of the summer, some vermicompost builds up, and we're using this now just to inoculate Gilligan as well as add some worms. Landon's just rinsed out the container to make sure we get every last worm out of that little patio worm bin, and just spreading around the moist materials to help moisten all these dry leaves. Of course, that's also going to inoculate those leaves. In addition to the manure, we've got some great microbial diversity. And you can see that there are indeed worms in this material. And so Gilligan's off to a great start. I found one of our native and ancient species of worms, Archaeostrotus vancouverensis, in that little patio container. These worms have survived well over 600,000 years on this little corner of the planet. They are not averse to light like red wigglers, and he took a long time to go down, so I had to speed the video up 3 times. Poor Landon, the next step is he decided to carry the entire tumbleweed worm cafe over to the patio. Now, you'll remember we put Gilligan's worms in the top just probably less than an hour ago. We're hoping most of them are still in there, but we can see a lot of them started to bolt for the exits by going down a level. I harvested this upper tray within the last month or so, and that means that this whole tray is now going to be deposited as the icing on the cake to Gilligan, containing not only the bulk of his worms, but also a great inoculation again for this worm bin. This beautiful vermicompost is nice and moist, and so I'm spreading it out gently over top of those drier leaves. The moisture now can equalize in this bin, and the worms can find their way down to those yummy leaves, which is about 12 inches deep. So here's what we ended up with. You see the old bait containers on the top, just in case there's wisps and whatnot hiding in the little creases of those Starbucks cups. So I'm sacrificing all those now. There's Gilligan's lid, which props up against our house. I gave him a burlap blanket on top of that nice leaf mixture. Landon is putting a box of styrofoam packaging underneath. You know, it's just packaging that we've got over the year, and, you know, for whatever it's worth, we just block off the cold air that may be coming up from the bottom. The seed heating mat is set to 16 degrees Celsius or 61 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't want to set it for higher than that because Gilligan does get about 4 hours of winter sun, which can heat up inside that turtle dome lid of his. We do put a bungee on top to hold him down in case a windstorm comes up. So that's it for Gilligan this winter. Thanks so much for watching. Bye for now.